Architects is to document buildings after they have been built. It's a lot more fun to decide where your window is going to be while you're building. And the reason why is because Sally Ann can look in there and she can put actually a chair there and she can decide what she wants to look at from her comfortable chair. None of my cabins that I've built have been drawn up. We always make jokes about where are the blueprints. There are no blueprints. I asked Gary to make it 10 by 16 on the inside. Everything else is happening as we're building. We're gonna set this window in a spot so that the space that's left over is exactly big enough for one row of bales.
Other window frame?
No.
Oh, that the door frame?
Wow, that's poetic.
Close.
So we need a board to
This will always be called.
I'm an experienced builder. I know how to build buildings. So the technology is one thing. How you bring the technology is another issue. And I'm more curious about that than I am this actual building. The appropriate ways to help here. What logistical structure, what educational structure do you create so that this could become replicated and so the people in this community could do it themselves?
Oh, there we go again.
Okay?
But do whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to cut it. It's on my thing.
So we have underneath here's a trench.
So I sort of think that the more water can go in and out of a building, the better.
I gotta take a photograph of that.
This mixture has both clay as well as rocks and smaller rocks in it. And when I take some of that and I compact it, it becomes tight. The clay is wet. Once it shrinks, it gets even tighter and it becomes like a solid floor.
Did we have to punch holes in that?
We would all dance, and in the dancing process, that the only rule was that while we were dancing and having a party, people would have to do this kind of a dance. You do that for half an hour with a group of 20 people, and you have a 10th floor.
Gary's the nicest man you'd ever met, but I don't see Gary much anymore. Gary's in southwestern South Dakota, trenches for a little bit of cash. Donnie helps you out when you need help, but I don't see Donnie much anymore. He lives in a car in South Dakota. He tells you the government is up to no good.
Everything that you need to build earth houses, we have it right here. This is the White River at the edge of the reservation. We have sand, we have gravel, and we have clay. It's all right here.
There are basically three things you look for in a bale. One is you want to make sure it's dry. Two, you want to make sure that it's somewhat rectangular and that the bales are fairly even. And three, that when you stand on it, that it feels like it moves as one unit and that it doesn't turn into, what's that thing called again? No. A parallelogram. Thank you, Michelle. We're dealing here with pretty weak bales, both in the sense that the strings are weak and also that the stuff, see, it just falls out of the side here. What is the impact of a weak bale? In non-load bearing straw bale construction, it's not that big of a deal because, you know, you stuff your bales in between these studs and the top plate, and, you know, even if they're very weak, it will still can become a tight unit. With load bearing, what we're going to be doing here in this building, it's a little more critical that we have strong bales. Because we have weak bales, we're going to use several different methods of securing the bales to one another, to the foundation, up and down, left and right, to see if we can, out of these loose bales, can make a wall that becomes one unit. The principle of the running bond. If this is my straw bale wall, this is what I mean by a running bond. If I were to put this one here, and this one here, these walls are disconnected. When they first started baling houses, they used stakes of rebar to connect them with one another. And we're going to be doing something similar. It's called staking. So you get a stake, like this one is an old piece of molding. And you put it through different layers of bales. This is what happened in the early days of straw bale construction, which was sort of in the 80s. If you put one stake through the middle, which is what they started doing with rebar, it's not very strong. It tends to create a hinge point. Okay, and so, you know, they thought, well, what if we use rebar? It's very, very strong, right? Rebar. Well, rebar is very, very strong this way. But it's not a very rigid material as soon as you have a long stake of it. It will still bend. At some point they said, why are we staking this stuff? And instead of staking, they started doing another thing, which was sort of what I call the sandwiching. Where they took two wooden stakes, and they put one on each side, and they connected them with baling twine. Okay, and now we started having a wall that would move as one unit that was really connected. During this workshop, we'll do both. We're going to stick a whole bunch of sticks in here and we're going to sandwich it. We're now going to go to the part that's going to take up a lot of our time this afternoon and tomorrow morning, which is the cutting of the bales. Quite often you have situations where, for example, there would be a window here and we just need a short little bale. We take an existing bale and we're going to put in 2 new pieces of baling twine, but at a different height, and we're going to tie those off. And once we have tied those, we can cut the original strings and we'll have 1 and maybe even 2 new bales. This thing is called a baling needle. It's a piece of metal that you can buy or find. And I took a sledgehammer and flattened the end, and then I took a drill and made a kind of a hole in here. You can also buy these, but they're easy to make for $2 or so. I take my baling twine and stick it through the hole. Let's just say we want to cut this bale in half. I'm going to come from the back. I'm going to try to stick it through, and I hope that I come out more or less where the string is on the other side. It's not bad. Okay, I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to take it out. I can bring this over the top here, tie this off, do the same thing on the other side, and now I have my half bale, right? Tying off is a rather unpleasant activity. It's hard on the hands. What I do is I make a little loop in here, and I pull this through here, and then I'm going to pull this tight. As tight as I can. Okay, and then I'm going to tie it off. This is easier to do with 2 people, by the way. Especially if somebody tells pirate jokes in the background.
And here, just not one of us hops up.
And cut it right here. Thank you.
It's definitely a resource that people should explore, you know, but it's up to them to decide what they want to do. You know, I think this looks like a viable alternative, you know, to satisfy a housing shortage. But it's up to the people themselves to decide what they want to do.
Over time, I think it will give them a sense of empowerment, so they can, you know, they can have better living conditions once they see this small shelter and they realize it was a bunch of amateurs that came in from all over the country to help build it.
If one group of people start building their own homes this way and people see that it's working, I think that it will have an effect on people to where they're wanting their own home and wanting to more for themselves and for their kids.
I thought a little woman, that's a giant woman.
Like sad, we call little.
We want to make sure that the bales do not stick out over the foundation. Before everybody starts getting into cutting bales, let's put a bale here and work our way that way. Here we have the mechanism of the running bond. I thought, yeah. Yes. The other side.
Okay.
And the other thing is this kind of thing.
Okay.
13 and a half has to go.
I mean, I guess it's
Working
not.
on the way up.
It is. You can't
Going up.
press
Look at that. All these knots, we just say tie knot. Well, I guess they call this the half. A lot of halves. The iron hole. Because they had a... Alright, see, we have no measuring tape because
Here, it's right here.
we're not high tech. Oh. Ahoo. 13 and a half. Oh, then we poke it right here. We do it slowly. Oh, I'd like to ask the great white father in Washington to bring me a
new straw bale.
Trying to hold it?
How's it going here?
Very well.
these. Some little slats. Go for a hide and you stake them down.
Is that
I
us?
did it already, huh?
Oh, that's
Yep. Actually, you know what I call this?
I think
This is a whole bale.
Look, there's one right there.
Why did you feel like swearing or what?
Do you need a hand?
Do I need a hand? What?
I got a big tamper right here.
That's one of the best ones.
And we really want these walls to go up straight. Okay, if the walls start leaning out, it's gonna be a very weak structure. Really what we want is that these walls to be plumb. In terms of terminology, this is level and this is plumb.
So 3 tons of caution work good for plastering. Okay, on that side.
Be careful when you put the
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to recap, before we put any stakes in the wall, we want to remember the things to look for. On the inside, we want to make sure that the bales line up nicely so we don't have to waste a lot of plaster correcting that. Once we put a stake from here all the way through to the bottom, we can't move these bales anymore. Perfect. And it's also very hard to take these stakes out once they're all the way in. So we want to get this as good as we can. Okay, we have 2 more bales to go up on top of here, and there's this mechanism called leverage, that the higher you get, even if it's off a little bit, it can put a lot of force on the wall one way or the other. So we want to be careful that by bale number 4, we're pretty much perfect. And at some point in April, there's going to be 75-mile-an-hour gusts of wind coming from that side. And we want to make sure that the building doesn't blow over, because it'll reflect badly on my business.
Okay.
You always have the worst faces when you're hammering.
Like those guys are staking there. You guys have confidence.
We already checked. Oh, really? You want to try?
My hope is that a lot of houses like this, or that are based on this technology but developed even further by the people who are living here, they're going to have ideas of their own that will enhance this, that maybe Conrad, I'm hoping, will have to come back someday and take a workshop from them.
How the heck did whatever happen?
Another person there. I'll go on the other side with the camper.
Okay.
I'll bring it in.
Okay.
How's that? We've done several things already to secure the bales. The first thing we've done is we put stakes in it. The second thing we've done is we also, after we put the top plate in, and we put stakes in from the top to secure the top plate to the bales. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our baling twine and tie the top plate, and with that the bales, to the foundation. And the last two things we're going to do to secure the bales, we're going to sandwich the bales in between strips of wood. And then we're going to fill up all the cavities with loose straw and cob. We need to have about 5 people sit on the wall. Those people sort of move up and down. This is the caveman method of cinching down the bales.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, down. 1, 2, 3, down. 1, 2, 3, down.
1, 2, 3, down. 1, 2, 3, down.
Do we have to go all the way past that frame?
Hey! Woohoo! Thank you!
I started reading the Lakota Way while we were here about the traditional stories from this group of people, and they were I really enjoyed reading the stories. They really spoke to how to be a good person and what qualities were important, and I really liked reading that. I'm not sure that that's really what their society is at this time, but that way of life definitely is honorable. And
I look at the society around us and I see what's happening to my 3 stepchildren. I see the consumerism. I see just people, it just seems to be greedy. People have turned away from nature, from God, the environment, and it's creating a breed of human that I don't like the way people think. I don't like the way people act, and I would rather not conform to a society like that. I'd rather get back to, a society or community that's more in touch with the earth.
well, in the story that I was reading, I really appreciated their description of humility as we think of that as kind of, in my opinion, we think of that as a negative thing, but they spoke of it as a really positive thing, that in their traditional society, a leader was someone that people came to and said, we want you to be a leader. It was not someone who campaigned and bragged and tried to attract people to them.
I just want to say, I think the next 2 days are going to be hard. I've had that feeling.
Is that your idea of a pep talk? It's gonna be breathing hard. You know that thing about where you're still hanging Don't lose hope.
Well, I think people get tired. We have several people sick. I just feel like we do what we can, and I'll try to teach as much as I can for your benefit. See, we sort of have a dual purpose here. One is to build a little cottage, but also for you to learn everything you need to know to do this yourself. And having said that, you can't learn everything in a week.
We don't learn anything in the first 3 months.
A strip of, in this case, it's 1x2 material. It could be bamboo, it could be willow, it could be other scraps of wood, but it needs to have some integrity to it. There's also going to be one on the outside here. And then we're going to take a little piece of baling twine. So the way this works is